All right, thanks, Wendy, and a good afternoon to everyone. As Wendy said, I'm Tony Bergantino. I'm the director of the Wyoming State Climate Office and the Water Resources Data System. And welcome to the first of the conditions briefings of 2025, which is, as always, it's a collaborative effort. And this week between my office and the University of Wyoming Extension with the USDA Northern Plains Climate Hub, USGS, the National Weather Service office up in Riverton, and the Natural Resources Conservation Service. And today, as usual, we'll be taking a look at climate drought conditions, stream flow, forecasts and outlooks. And then for our highlight of the month, we'll be taking a look at the USDA, the NRCS's interactive mapper. So here is the newest, one more slide. Here's the newest drought monitor map. It's from this morning, showing conditions as of Tuesday, the 14th. Sort of a mix of improvements. Those are circled in green and degradations circled in red. When you compare to our last webinar, which is in November, very generally speaking, the improvements are in the northeast and southwest, while the areas of degradation are in the northwest and southeast. All of Wyoming has now been in D0 or abnormally dry conditions or worse for the last 15 weeks. Look at drought 1 year ago over here on the left. It continued to expand, especially in the north and west, compared to now here over on the right, though. Currently, most areas 3 to 4 categories worse than they were a year ago. To save your eyeballs a bit of strain comparing the two, the areas circled in black are sitting at the same drought category they were at last year at this time, while this little green area down here is the one part of the state that is now in a lower drought category than it was back 1 year ago. Here we have the weekly percent of Wyoming in each drought category over the last 25 years now. Currently, almost 86.8% thereabouts percent of the state is in drought, which is down a little over 11.5% from the last webinar. The level of D3 or extreme drought has remained somewhat consistent since the last briefing, and the area of D2 or severe drought has gone up a bit. However, up on the upper right of the chart, that resurgence of yellow and the drop of beige signifying a increase in the area of D0 means we've got some improvement in that moderate and abnormally dry conditions. So here's a zoomed in version showing the last 5 years in more detail compared to that last graph. You can get a little bit more resolution here. It shows current and the previous drought cycle. At the scale of that last graph, that D3, like I say, remained fairly level, at least relative to the changes in the D0 and D1, although here you can see that the D3 did increase a little bit, about 3.5%, while the area of D2 went up about 5.25% compared to where we were at back during the November webinar. So here's 14-day total precipitation. Last 2 weeks, most of the state has been above median precipitation, with the exception of the west, where precip has been median to a bit below median. Same with the south central Sweetwater County area, much smaller area though than up here in the northwest. Going back 3 months, 90-day time frame, still quite a bit of the state above median, but now we see 2 distinct areas in the northwest and southeast that are below to well below median, and some of the areas there being under the 10th percentile. That's those red colors and deeper red colors that you see on the map there. Comparing the water year over here on the left and the calendar year over here on the right, these are precipitation totals as a percent of normal. On the left is, as I said, the water year, and that diagonal swatch of above average precipitation that we saw at 90 days on the previous slide, and we've been seeing actually for a few webinars now, is still present, but slightly diminished, with below average on either side of it to the northwest and southeast. On the right here, the precip since the calendar year, which is a whole 2 weeks now, so pretty much the same story that we saw on the 14-day map that was 2 slides back. Just this is in terms of percents rather than the percentiles. So pretty much the same areas stand out in the west and down there in central Sweetwater County, with the rest of the state being above and well above average in places, actually. So here is the standardized precipitation index, the SPI. The map on the upper left shows conditions for the last 30 days, and the one on the upper right is the last 2 months or 60 days. Quite a difference in the representations, with it showing wetness at the 30-day, except for some areas like Washakie County, while the 60-day is showing conditions on the dry side, in some cases very dry. This combination kind of represents an improvement that's going on in the short-term conditions. And, given what we've experienced over the last 2 months, this should come as no surprise. Actually, at my Kokoroa station, I've gotten more than half of my snow for this season just during the last 2 weeks. So definitely a change. And unfortunately, that's meant more shoveling, but I guess I'll take that to get some snow water equivalent sitting around. The Northwest does stand out as one of those areas that is wet at both of the time scales. And then as we go back into time and look a full year back down the road, down here on the lower right, we do see some gray in the Bighorn Basin and in the Southwest, along with some scattered other areas. And that gray represent areas that they're right about the normal, neither wet nor dry. And there's even very few small areas just hanging onto the wet side, the largest of those being in southwestern Carbon County. But the major part of the state is those yellows and even oranges, indicating those different and intensifying levels of dryness as you go into those redder categories. Okay, looking at nighttime temperatures over the last 2 weeks, up here on the upper right, below freezing statewide. Upper Green Basin here has been the coolest area of the state the last 2 weeks, with average temperatures there being below zero, average low temperatures. But in terms of departure from normal, down here on the lower left, we have an area running southwest to northeast, that diagonal again, that has seen above normal temperatures, with temperatures generally 3 to 5 degrees. Well, along the diagonal, they're about median, but then as you go on either side of that down here in the southeast, you got below normal temperatures, 3 to 5 degrees below normal south of that line. And then obviously with a few exceptions there in gray, and even some of those yellow and orange areas, but those don't indicate, significant departures on the positive side. North central part of the state has been about 2 to 4 degrees above normal, except for the Bighorns, which have been about 2 to 3 degrees below normal. The winds in a few other higher elevation areas also about 2 to 3 degrees below normal. Moving to daytime highs, again on the upper left here, or upper right, excuse me. Just at or slightly above freezing in the western Bighorn Basin, down in the southwestern Sweetwater County, Platte, Goshen, Laramie County area. Rest of the lower elevation areas in the mid to upper 20s, while the high country that was getting between 15 and 25 degrees for highs in the last 2 weeks. And then again, down here on the lower left are the departures from normal for the highs. And you can see almost the entire state at or below normal, with the vast majority being below normal. There's 3 very, very minor exceptions, 2 in Fremont County and then northern Teton County, that are just a hair on the side of the positive departures from normal, but very, very insignificant. The eastern tier of counties saw average temperatures more than 10 degrees below normal, with those departures lessening the further west one goes. Not to steal any thunder, so to speak, from the National Weather Service portion of this briefing, but with the temperatures turning cold this weekend and into next, I thought I'd just do a quick highlight of this product that we have that lets users go in and select any station, any of these little red thermometers around the state, and view the daily average and extreme temperatures. This example shows the Laramie Airport, and today being the 16th, you can see the record low for the date is -30. and average of about 10, but not to get too optimistic, the record was 52. No chance of breaking either of those today, probably. If you're able to view it and you hover over the dates on the chart, you then see the year that record occurred as well. And when I said for any station, I meant any station in the US that we've got the data for, and here's the coverage of those stations. So just to invite you to check it out and explore a bit over the next week to see how things are going. Soil moisture conditions continuing to worsen, expanding over to the getting those darker red colors over here in the west. Pretty much degradation in quite a few areas. Few areas did improve over here in the east central part of the state, but by and large, soil moisture continues to get worse. The ground frozen in many areas, though changes shouldn't be too dramatic. Some other soil moisture models show a little change as well, but limited to about 2 to 3 percentiles in Wyoming, and that's improvement and unimprovement or degradation, but pretty consistent over the last week or so. All right now we look at the basin snowpack. So the current map, the large one here on the left, Lower Green and Belle Fourche are the only basins above median, although 7 others, it looks like, are within 90% of that. Compared to this time last year, the smaller map over here, we're at a mix of above or below, but with more above than below, which is a good sign, and hope it stays that way. The basins now that are worse than last year are the Shoshone, the Wind, the Bear, and Sweetwater here in the center part of the state. And looking at modeled snowpack across the state, these are the gridded data compared with the last slide, which was just basin-wide numbers. These are showing each of the grid cells across the state and country, so it gives a lot finer detail of where conditions are rather than just a basin number. So this shows some distinct areas below median, such as the Northwest, parts of the Winds and Bighorns, South Central Wyoming. There are areas above still, but too many yellow and red areas on the map right now. The red showing parts of the state where the snow water equivalent is less than 50% of median. And this map is updated daily. So again, I'd invite you to come in and check it out and keep an eye on things. And one more, we'll just show you frost depths again. Still a few small instrumented areas up in the northeast that haven't thawed ground for now, but we'll see how those areas fare over the next week. And I think with that, I will turn it over to the USGS and Aaron Fiaschetti to talk about the state of surface water conditions. Aaron?
Thank you, Tony. So here's a look from our National Water Information dashboard of the current real-time stream flow conditions for Wyoming. If you'll notice, there's a lot of gray on the map. That means that the measurement or the station is flagged, and the most likely reason is it's mostly it's in ice or it's a seasonal station. With the cold temperatures and ice forming on rivers, that disrupts the stage discharge relationship and makes us unable to provide a reliable real-time stream flow condition. So normally those records will get worked up over the winter and a daily flow will be estimated. So, but right now, kind of looking around, you'll see the fair amount of sites that are in that green, what's considered normal. That's 25th to 75th percentile, the median being your central tendency. And if you poke around, most of the green sites are pretty close to the median, so things look pretty good. There are a few sites that are showing that much below normal, below the 25th percentile. Those are the orange stations. And just kind of a note about where we are in the water year. So kind of things are doing what they should be. Precipitation's falling as snow. The snow is not melting. So we're kind of reliant on either base flow right now or releases out of reservoirs, and the stations that are in open water that are showing a percentile condition are up in the mountains where there's a significant enough gradient to prevent ice from forming, or below a reservoir or on a major river. So that's kind of what's open water right now. So Yeah, and there is a couple pretty low stations there, much below normal. I think that's on the up in the park there on the Tantalus River, I believe, and then a couple other stations there on the north end of the Wind Rivers that are pretty low. So just moving on to the sites that are open and available, just taking a look the next slide, taking a look at the Wind River above Red Creek near Du Bois. That's showing a below average, below that 25th percentile. And you can kind of see it's been hanging out in that area since October. Not a lot of real bumps from fall precipitation, and it's just kind of staying where it is, pretty close to that 25th percentile. And that'll probably continue on as we're had a dry year, a lot of the states in drought, so that you would expect that base flow would kind of continue to be at a lower rate through the winter until we start to get some snow melt and some movement in March and April, and a little more water in the system. So that remains to be seen. But right now, that's where that station is at, and you probably can expect that the next time we visit that that station will be in a similar condition unless things get abnormally warm. Moving on to the other station, so that first station, that Wind River, is kind of up in a little higher elevation up in the mountains. And here's a different look at open water conditions. This is a Green River below Fontenelle Reservoir, so below a major reservoir, big river. And you can kind of see that flows have been steady. They've been increasing. Looks like there's been some water movement out of Fontenelle Reservoir in recent days, but things are kind of held pretty steady there, and they're moving water for whatever operations they might need downstream or within the reservoir itself. But that site will be pretty dependent on the operation decisions by the Bureau of Reclamation. So somewhere around pretty close to the median right now, and what that does in the future will remain to be seen. So just moving on to a quick look at the reservoirs across the state. It's not a time of great water availability in streams. So there's been pretty minor changes in storage. The two reservoirs of note would be a decrease in water in Fontenelle and a pretty good increase in Palisades. Both were around 13%. So other than that, most reservoirs are kind of held because a lot of inflow or outflow, and there's probably some concerns about managing that water at an elevation that's good for the ice and infrastructure. And then across the state, the reservoirs are mostly 50 to 80% full, the major ones. So that's all I have. Thank you, Tony.
Thanks, Aaron. So stepping forward to the future and looking at some forecasts and outlooks, we now go to Jerry Swanson, who's with the National Weather Service in Riverton. Go ahead, Jerry.
Great. Thank you, Tony. So as you can see, this is kind of our hazard calendar. And you can see the yellow bar on the left there shows where in the process we are. Currently, January, February, mainly winter storm is our main one. And then also the high wind area at the bottom. And that's usually associated with those winter storms. And of course, we do have that nice winter storm that's moving in tomorrow morning, starting from the north. So we'll definitely see a little bit of snow with that. Next. So here's our 7-day precip total. With the cold front moving in, you can see the darker green areas. This is where we're looking for the heaviest snow moving in with this cold front. We do have winter weather advisories out for much of central and eastern Wyoming. A lot of those areas that are in the green, the dark green, we are expecting to see snow 4 to 6 inches for a lot of places, but even areas around that are still looking possibly ½ inch to a couple inches. So a good part of the state will see some precip with this front, starting tomorrow, like I said, Friday morning through Saturday noontime. And then it's going to be dry for the remainder of the 7 days. So most of that precipitation showing is going to be just in these first couple of days. Next slide. So here's our 8 to 14 day outlook starting next week, the 23rd. You can see the left-hand slide. We are still going to be in that area of below normal temperatures. Luckily, the coldest temperatures will be through us by about Tuesday, and we'll start to see a slow warm up. Unfortunately, the basins like Wind River Basin will be much colder longer than other locations. The right-hand side, you can see for the short term, looking for above normal precipitation for that 8 to 14 day outlook. Other than that one little sliver in the southwest showing normal chances, so climate there, but most of the state is showing above normal for the 8 to 14 day outlook. Next slide, please. So here's our monthly outlook into February. Left-hand slide showing temperatures mainly going to be equal chances. So looking at just climate normals for most of the state, except just that southwestern little bit leaning toward above normal temperatures for February. Right-hand side, same thing. The white area is mainly equal chances, so climate normals for most of the state, with just that northwest portion looking for leaning toward above normal with just 33 to 40% chance of above normal precipitation. So for some reason, they haven't updated the temperatures yet for the quarter, for the quarter. So this one is still the January, February, March outlook for temperatures, looking for mainly leaning toward above normal temperatures. And then the one on the right is the most current updated precipitation outlook for February, March to April. And unfortunately, we don't like seeing that, but equal chances to a lot of leaning toward below normal precipitation, all that brown area there in the southwest, just about south or southeast half of the state. So we don't like to see that. We want to see more green, but right now they're looking for it's going to be drier than normal, unfortunately. Next slide, please. Oh, I guess that was it for me. So thank you very much. I'll move on to the next, to the highlight.
All right,
Thanks, Tony.
Jay. And now we have Eric Larson, who's with the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and he's doing the highlight of the month, which is the USDA's interactive climate mapper.
All right. Thanks, Tony. Yeah, I'm Eric, and I'm the snow program manager for the USDA NRCS snow survey program located out of Bozeman. Our region covers all of Montana, but then also most of the northern half of Wyoming, including the Bighorn, Powder, and Tongue River basins. And yeah, I'm giving you an update on how to use a little tutorial on how to use the interactive map, a little overview of some of the features in it today. And so to start, it's a little bit about our station information, because this plays into what types of frequency and just the general data that you might be pulling from the interactive map. So 2 types of stations we manage are snow courses on the left there. Snow courses are manually measured monthly, January 1st through June 1st. Not all of them have that full 6-month schedule. Some are just like March, April, May. It varies per snow course, but they're more historic. Some of the oldest ones date back to early 1920s. Then there was a big push from then up until the 1970s to establish many more snow courses. The other type of station is a SNOTEL site. When the technology became available in the mid-1970s, we started installing SNOTELs. These measure hourly data. So essentially you can grab hourly, daily, or monthly data from SNOTEL sites. Snow courses are monthly only. That's kind of the main takeaway from this slide. And the next one. Okay, so this is just a map of our region, just showing all the SNOTELs and snow courses out there. Dark blue dots are the SNOTELs, light blue are the snow courses. So quite a few more snow courses across the West. And so just keep that in mind as you're pulling data from the interactive map, whether it's monthly or daily. It might be more beneficial to grab that top of the month data because it would include that snow course information. And then last note about this slide is California has their own state-run snow survey network. All their snow courses included in that number are managed by the California Department of Water Resources. That's outside of the NRCS network, but still included in our interactive map. And next one. All right, so to get to the interactive map, this is probably the most convenient way, I guess. It's the National Water Climate Center Applications, NWCC Apps webpage. And just up top there, you can access several of our products, whether it's a report generator, update reports. But there's interactive maps. You'd click on that. Links down below as well. But yeah, next slide. You can also just bookmark the interactive map itself, which is that link down below. And then, yeah, so this is just an overview of what the interactive map has to show. I have the station inventory selected in the map controls there. So it's showing every station you can grab data from across the West. And some of those elements at those stations include snow, precipitation, soils, reservoir data, stream flow data. So it's not specific to just NRCS data. We also have data from those other sources there, including Canadian snow data, USGS stream flows, different reservoir operators, and so forth. Last part to note about this slide is the interactive map only includes monthly and hourly data. You're not seeing monthly and daily data. I guess I have a little typo there. But so the hourly data is accessible from the interactive map, but it's generally from like a pop-up screen. So you maybe pull a report of the hourly data within the interactive map. So just to rephrase that, monthly and daily data are available in the interactive map. Next slide. All right, so a quick example of how to get the snow water equivalent as a % of median for basin-wide conditions. First step is clicking on that basin tab in the map mode. Then you'd click on snow water equivalent. And then down in the parameter, you do % of NRCS 91 to 2020 median. And then the frequency, in this case, we're mid-month, so we're looking at daily. End of day. So quick note on that, end of day versus first of day would be the other option. It's just the midnight reading. So January 14th, end of day would be the same value as January 15th, first of day. So just keep that in mind. It applies to end of month, first of month as well. But then it's not shown on this, but down below the basin display, you could select, I've got a slide on that later, but you could select any different basin varieties that you'd like. And the Go To Now button, in case it doesn't default until today's date, click that. And the relative URL, so if that's unchecked, so if you bookmark this and that is checked, it would always bring you to the current date. If that was unchecked, then it would just bring you to the date in which you made the bookmark. So it's just a good way to get back to the most current conditions. And then you can print export to JPEG or PDF if you prefer. All right. Okay, so diving into the map controls a little bit closer here. This is just a condensed, with all the tabs kind of condensed here of the entire control panel on the right. And the different sections within that control panel are the map mode, conditions, station selection, and map layers. And so map mode, conditions, and station selection are all dynamic within each other. So depending on what you're selecting in any one of those sections, it'll change the options that pop up within any one of the other tabs. The map layers are kind of on their own. They're just overlays and so forth. But I'll kind of go through some examples here in the next couple slides. Okay, so looking at map mode, in this case, on the left, I have station conditions selected. And you can just see, comparing it to where on the right, where basin conditions or station/basin conditions are selected. There's just a lot more elements and parameters available to select for stations. So the reason is water year peak, date of water year peak, those types of parameters or elements are only available for stations. We don't have those on the interactive map for basin-wide conditions. So yeah, the takeaway here, options change based off what you have selected, but the selections with the most options would be that daily station data. So SNOTEL station data. All right. Looking at snow courses as compared to SNOTEL in the map controls, and specifically the date, frequency, and duration. So on the left, snow course, I have snow course station conditions selected. And if you have any of those elements, whether it's snow water equivalent, depth, delta, or density selected, you have the option of doing daily or monthly. So that's where you're getting your option to get snow courses in your map. But on the right, if you're looking at SNOTEL data, station conditions, just because that is the frequency of what that's measured, we can actually reliably look at water year peaks and date of water year peaks. So that's why that's available as SNOTEL conditions. And then SNOTELs have precipitation gauges, soil moisture, and soil temperature sensors at some of them for the soil portion of that. All SNOTELs have precip. But kind of just the takeaway is snow course data is limited to the monthly, but SNOTEL can be viewed as either daily or monthly. All right. And then moving down the control panel, one of the next selections is the basin display. So if you are looking at basin-wide conditions, you have the option of selecting basin type. And that includes either the standardized 2, 4, 6, or 8 HUCs, or also within the NRCS, there's some state-specific basins. Those are more of a combination of the 6 and the 8 HUC, and they were established quite a few years ago for each of those states, just as a way to kind of view your own specific state, and more focused around where we had stations located and so forth. So you can look at that at major basin as shown in that map, or sub-basin as well. Next slide. And just some of the other options within that map control, conditions and the data display on the left. Reference period, you can look at entire period of record data, or you can select fixed. So if you wanted to look at a different reference period for, say, a median, you could change that to whatever 81 to 2010 or any custom fixed period you like. You can change color scales, transparency of layers, all that stuff in that control. And then station selection, this is where you can turn on different states, collection networks. You can put on if that active sites only. You can look at old sites that are no longer active. If you want to see some of the older snow courses that aren't measured anymore, it might be available if that was unchecked. And then the map layers is just showing different base layers you can have on there, overlays, tribal boundaries, state, county boundaries, and then labels on the far right are just different metrics. So if you wanted to have the inches of precipitation next to the station on the map you're creating, you could select station labels, parameter, or for the basin-wide conditions, you'd have that parameter checked under watershed labels. Yeah, next slide. Okay, this is a part that I think some folks miss. The interactive map allows you to click on either stations or basins. In this case, I'm showing what occurs if you click on a basin. So I have basin-wide snow water equivalent as a % of median on that map. And if I click on the Powder River Basin, that dialog box pops up and you have the snow water equivalent plot right in the center there, and you can actually click on that plot and that'll open in a new window, and that's also interactive itself. Below that, you have those 4 tabs, so the stations, parameters, basin, and data reports, and that's just kind of showing you what those are expanded. So if you wanted to see how that 81% for the Powder River was calculated, that's that top right table there is how that 81% is calculated. And then just some other metadata related stuff, and then links to data reports for the basin. Next slide. Same thing, but for the stations. So the map I have shown there is snow water equivalent, end of day, January 14th, as it compares to the period of record. So the map will show the highest on record and the lowest on record stations. So in this case, red dots are lowest on record, orange are second lowest on record, and Younts Peak Snowtell of the Shoshone Basin on the end of day, January 14th, had lowest snowpack on record. Important to note, it did burn handful of years ago, 2014-ish. So it different conditions more recently. But just how those tabs expand on this site are shown on the right. It's slightly different because it's a station versus a basin. And you can see maximum year during the period of record for snow water equivalent for that date was 1997. There was 15.5 inches of snow water equivalent, as compared to this year, 4.1. So, and then just the number of observations and so forth. And then if you wanted to link to hourly data, that's where I was referring to earlier under that data reports tab. You have your 7-day hourly or 30-day daily tables available to open right there. All right, next slide. Another feature is you can export site data or basin data as a CSV. So that tab is located in the upper left corner of the interactive map, and it'll only export what is shown on the map. So in this case, in the control panel, I narrowed it down using that basin station selection to the upper north plat. And then when I go to export site data as a CSV, I'll get all those outputs in my CSV comma separated file. And so you'll have that for all stations within the upper plat. But if you did that for the basin, it would export a different set of variables just for the upper plat alone. So yeah, just be aware, if you had like everything in the country on the map, it would be a really, really large CSV file. All right, next slide. Just a couple more examples here before I wrap up. Water year precipitation as a percent of median. So to get that on the map, you'd go basin conditions, precipitation, 91 to 2020 median, and then I have daily selected water year to date for the duration, and then it's giving you October 1st through January 14th precipitation for basin-wide conditions. And Wyoming is, of course, selected there. And yeah, next slide. A station example here. So we're looking at snow water equivalent departure from median in terms of inches. So how above or below that median value for January 14 end of day we are in terms of inches. So to get that, select station conditions on these control panels shown on the right here. Station conditions, snow water equivalent, and then under the parameter, you're looking at anomaly, 91 to 2020, median departure. That typically defaults in the anomaly as period of record. So I had to go to data display options, change that in the far right there from period of record to fixed for that 91 to 2020 period. And then, so what it's showing is that a lot of Wyoming snowtail stations the green ones are pretty close to normal. One storm or so could really make up the difference there. Yellow ones are a little further behind. And then if you get into the blue territory, you're actually a little above median value for that date. All right, next slide. All right, so in summary, yeah, only daily and monthly data is available on the IMAP. It's a complex tool with lots of features. It can be highly confusing. Took me a while to figure out all the different features within that control panel. So I just suggest creating bookmarks to get back to certain maps that you might look at frequently, and then utilize those pop-up windows to access water year plots and different report generators. And then some folks might remember the old static PDF maps that were on the NRCS site for snow water equivalent. Those are now replaced with that print export button. So you can kind of create your own maps for that. And then just left you there with a bunch of URLs. You can go grab that data quickly, kind of centered around Wyoming. But yeah, just click on those links to the right and you can bookmark whatever you'd like. That wraps it up.
All right, thanks, Eric. I know you just scratched the surface on that. It's a really powerful tool, and I recommend it to everybody on here to go on and see what you can do with it and what you can find. It's a very useful tool. And
Thank you.
with that, I'll push it over to Wendy.
All right, great. Well, thanks everyone. And I just want to laugh at my WK, which is myself, might add a QR code, and I had, but we started sharing the screen after I added it. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat. And as you can see, this QR code is to ask for your input and feedback. We really appreciate everybody attending today's webinar. And we do these webinars for all of you, and we want to make them as useful and usable as possible. So there's not a QR code, but there is a link in the chat for you to click, and we again value your input. And I want to thank all of the presenters and the attendees to today's webinar. And we have a number of questions in the chat as well as the Q&A. So I'm going to stop recording and then we will go into questions.